So the guidance for AI policy development document was created by the community, came out of a need to kind of start thinking about this and how to go about crafting such a document or considerations when creating such a document for an institution. So we included the CI planning community of practice, the cybersecurity community of practice, and also the IT leaders community of practice. So went through a few iterations of input from you all. So this is definitely very much a community document by and for. Today I'm just going to take some time to go through what we have developed. It doesn't have to be a static document. It is designed so that it will be iterated upon. But just wanted to deliver back out to all of you what we have thus far. One thing to note is that we did Creative Commons license this document, and it is a BY-NCSA, which means that it is free to be shared, copied, redistributed in any format, and it can be adapted, so it can be remixed, transformed, and built upon the existing material to utilize as you all see fit. Um, it does require attribution, so it does have to, you do have to give credit for the document that you are leveraging. And it's a non-commercial entity, so that it cannot be used for commercial purposes. You can also share alike. So if you do remix it, it is asked that you contribute it under the same license, as the same CC license. And the document on the bottom of the footer of each page does have that information as well, so you could take a look at that. So I did see in there, David, yes. So we don't have a link to it right now, but we will be uploading it into the resource website. So it will be available there. Once it is within the resource website, we will share it out that way. So thank you for that. I did mean to mention that as well. Okay. So I just wanted to start off here with, and if folks have questions along the way, feel free to add them in the chat. We will probably try to take them at the end, but if it's something that I'm talking about at the time, I'm happy to address it. So table of contents here, just want to show you all the way that we broke this all out. So we started out with some of the key takeaways that came out of just all of the discussions that we've had with community members. Talked about our methodology and how we did all of this. Then we delve into the actual kind of content of things, including the overall considerations when you're starting this process. And then all the section guidelines. We came out with 5 separate sections which are composed of Section 1 being the user support, training, and access. Section 2, technical and operational considerations. Section 3, campus strategy and governance. Section 4 being compliance and incident response. And then the final section being about machine learning and large language models. We do have references that we've added at the end in addition to the contributors who asked to be named in this document as well. So key takeaways. These are really the themes that kind of emerge consistently across the board throughout these working sections and really reflect the most pressing considerations for institutions developing or refining a policy such as this. And these takeaways really helped form the structure of and the content of this document itself. So those included acceptable use and accessibility, opt-out mechanisms, that was definitely a really big one, infrastructure readiness itself, storage and agentic workflows, training at all levels, which also was something that was definitely of high interest, vendor LLM integrations. So the vendor component was also something that was highly talked about. Talking about internal and external tool barriers, and then finally, communities of practice. We just named it as communities of practice. It can show up in other ways via working groups or other types of groups that your institutions may already kind of put together now. We just kind of named it as that for ease of discussion. Moving on here is to our background methodology. So here we just talked about the way that we developed this, how it was community-driven process through peer institution expertise and input from all of you. talking about our landscape review so that it was reviewed existing national and regional conversations on AI use in higher education, drawing from attendance at national and sector-specific events, published literature and policy frameworks and insights from peer institutions and professional networks engaged in early AI adoption. So some of that kind of alludes to those additional external resources that we found and also you all have shared with us in considering developing a document such as this, as you are also considering AI policy development with your own institutions. Continuing on with methodologies, we talked about development of the AI policy shell itself and the structure of the working sessions that we had, including the other groups that we worked with, which includes the AI working group from AHEC. And we kind of featured those folks in one of our group sessions as well. So many of you probably had a chance to interface with that session and those folks too. Um, and wanted to just highlight here again that this document is designed to be dynamic. It's not going to stay static. We are probably going to continue to iterate upon this. And it is designed for you all for use as a flexible starting point. Definitely not a prescriptive kind of a document or something that's mandated. It's a bit overwhelming, I think, in some ways, because it includes so many things. But it is intended to be comprehensive so that all of these different components can be considered as you are looking to put some policy and guidance around AI in your institutions. It's also designed so that any institution on any stage of the AI policy development can leverage this. And again, to iterate for your own policies and find relevant guidance and recommended areas of action for all of these components. So overall considerations, I think we put this first, obviously, because we felt that this was not just us, but the community felt that this was important to consider before diving into something like this, and that institutions need to address certain components, basically a foundational set of things and questions that will shape the scope and governance of the AI adoption on your institutional campus. So one of the big things was, of course, stakeholder engagement and making sure that all levels are engaged in some capacity, because this does affect all of the constituents from an institution at the end of the day. Of course, then implementation strategy to ensure that there's actual adoption of this, and understanding of the importance of taking into consideration the parameters and policies set forth in such a document for the institution. And of course, the policy scope. There was a lot of discussion on how the scope should start. What came out of that was it is recommended that the initial scope should actually include all of the things. So it should kind of be as most comprehensive as possible, covering AI, ML, LLMs, and generative AI across all institutional contexts. That being said, sometimes that can be difficult, and we recognize that there are alternative paths that may be taken and should be considered, perhaps with the strongest need being perhaps just AI only for your institution and then expanding that scope. The idea behind being comprehensive in that initial scope is so that folks are taking it seriously and are considering all of these pieces when engaging with tools or trying to implement AI components throughout your institution. Another big thing was, of course, the opt-out option. Um, so considering on what that means for your institution, if that's something that is possible, and of course, then considering what that means for contracts and other things that you sign with vendors as you implement tools within your institution. So the scope of current AI use is also important to understand how it's currently being used within your institution. Some of those common areas are listed there, including administrative, teaching and learning, and research support. Student services, I think, is something that is definitely ramping up. We're seeing an increase in chatbots and things to help students with advising or other critical institutional services, student services. So understanding what is being used today so that the scope can be appropriately aligned. In addition to scope alignment, there does have to also be strategic alignment, understanding what your institution envisions, and that so it can be distributed in a responsible yet innovative way within your campus. Finally, of course, data management practices. So understanding how user input um, is implemented into any tools or the policy itself. And of course, improving that model training. So reviewing data usage practices is going to be important to maintain ethics, privacy, security, all of those things. Okay. So then we actually get into the sections themselves. So those five different sections. And within each of these sections, we kind of broke down into the different themes that were within each and some of the considerations, of course, um, and the purpose for each of these areas. So starting with number one is user support, training, and access. So it's what we came to find was that AI adoption does require more than just deploying a tool and having people utilize it. It does have to have some support structures in place, including training pathways, not just for students, but for faculty and administrators as well, so that all constituents can engage with the tools responsibly and confidently. Some of the particular training suggestions were thinking about semester courses and also doing perhaps annual training and async modules. So basically, just a lot of different types of trainings available so that it fits with people's schedules and the needs that they would have, the different modalities that work for each person. And then here we also mentioned the communities of practice. Again, they can kind of be named differently for your own institution, as could be like a group forum, a working group, or other type of named group that your institution may use today to share that institutional knowledge across the campus and feel as though folks are engaged in creating the definitions. Another big thing that came out of this particular section around user support and training was policy enforcement and accountability. So understanding that there probably should be some sort of formal acknowledgement, and if this perhaps would roll into existing policies, and the mechanisms by which users are agreeing to those terms already, perhaps like a pop on the portal or something like that. And of course, during onboarding for new folks who are coming into the institution, whether that's personnel or students themselves. Other areas in here include the resource allocation access control, risk model, of course, where it's both the vendor side and also the institution side. So identifying and kind of coming into agreement those various frameworks so that the risk model is understood and can be offered to your vendor and also meet the institutional needs. Additionally, in here is the feedback and policy adaptation, accessibility, and accommodations, which of course are going to be important as are accessibility and accommodations for anything related to institutional and student services. And then, of course, finally here in this section, staff onboarding, training, and mentorship. All right, so I'm going to move to section 2 under technical and operational considerations. Before I move to that, any questions or feedback on whether I'm going too quickly or not fast enough? All right, thanks for that. I will keep on keeping on. So technical and operational considerations. So deploying AI at an institutional level requires careful planning around infrastructure, workload management, software governance, and data handling. The technical and operational considerations form the backbone of a sustainable AI policy framework. So really, the intent of this section is just to reiterate that it has to be sustainable. It has to be, how do we make it so that folks are continuing to feel supported? So supported workloads and technical requirements, understanding what these are, what does that mean for your institution, what does it mean for the tools that you're implementing, and understanding the unique structure, governance, and the security implications of each of them. All right. Other components in this section include system performance and security maintenance, software management and oversight, software request and approval process. So that's another big one that came out of this. Was that folks needed to feel as though they were supported, and wanted to be able to use things, whether it's in the classroom or research, but also wanting to make sure that they're adhering to any institutional policy. So having a process in place is important so that folks can feel like they can use things, and have a mechanism to request to use specific things. Additionally, in here, software licensing administration, job submission and resource handling, and storage policies and data categorization. So that is another big one, the storage policy. That, of course, if there's something that already exists within your institution, definitely leverage any of those existing policies. It doesn't mean that you have to create a new one, but it may require some revisiting and perhaps some amending. So those are some of the other considerations that came out of this, um, in trying to assimilate with existing policies. The final three things in section two include storage platforms, sensitive data management and decommissioning, and of course, secure data transfer. Really just wanting to make sure that data is managed in some sort of a way that is understood across the board and implemented appropriately. And of course, making sure that the processes are identified and the tools that are used are approved, and in alignment with basically not just the software guidance that is perhaps already existing on your campus, but also when considering collaborators or other things that may come about with these new tools. Okay, section three. Campus strategy and governance. AI governance is not solely a technical challenge, it is a strategic and organizational one. So, effective policy requires formal structures, clear accountability, and deliberate communication strategies. So, understanding the strategic goals for AI on the campus is probably one of the biggest things in this section to consider so that there is alignment. Of course, policy oversight and governance goes hand in hand with that. So establishing some sort of a governance structure, there perhaps is already a process in place. So then just creating something that is specific for AI. So perhaps like an AI committee, a fact and assimilating with the faculty senate leadership or a provost approved council to oversee this type of work. Governance responsibilities are also a big part of that. And then the other component is that communication piece. So communications and outreach, and then communications of the policies and practices themselves. So some of the things that were suggested here were for communications and outreach, were institutional portals, listservs, faculty seminars, dedicated web pages, workshops, and community briefings. Again, all designed to provide different ways in which the various constituents can engage, and be part of this, not just for understanding, but perhaps to provide input as well. So user feedback collection is part of that. So what are the mechanisms by which you're going to solicit this type of feedback? Is it going to be a form on a page? Are you going to send out a survey? Um, what are the ways that you get engagement now? Outreach for new users, and then policy review and continuous improvement. So that last one, the policy review and continuous improvement, was another big thing that I think that was discussed, around trying to understand how to ensure that a policy or something that is enacted isn't just a static page and that is never revisited, and making sure that this is as dynamic as the tools are. Okay, section 4, compliance and incident response. So AI systems introduce new compliance obligations and incident response complexities that institutions must ensure their AI policies reference the applicable regulatory frameworks and establish clear, tested procedures for responding to AI-related incidents. Oftentimes, an institution already has some sort of incident response plan in place and mechanisms by which they handle these things. So understanding if those existing things can be used for these new AI tools and features, or if perhaps some new things need to be created as a result. Some of the things discussed are centralized administration control, terms on data ownership and control, vendor and API, console, on-premise shutdown protocols if there's an incident that perhaps is pretty severe, and also ways to isolate or quarantine things. Regulatory and policy alignment. So understanding what things that you have to adhere to. There's this table here includes some of the things that you may have to align with, but understanding which ones apply to you and what those are, what the definitions are to ensure that you are in compliance. There are, of course, contractual considerations, and if there is an incident, detecting said incident, and then what about afterwards? How do you recover and how do you get back up and running? What are the post-event activities that have to take place? Are there other obligations for reporting? Things like that. And some of that's going to be based upon the regulatory and policy alignment. All right, section 5 is the last section within the guidance areas, which is machine learning and large language models. As ML and LLM capabilities become embedded in institutional tools and research workflows, institutions need explicit policies governing their development, deployment, oversight, and use in teaching and learning contexts. So some of this feels a bit repetitive, I think, only because we're talking about those same types of things where it's use and governance, data segregation, but some of this it came about that really it needs to kind of have its own portion simply because of what it's doing, how it's generating data, how it's creating data. I mean, it is machine learning and large language models, so there's a bit more to it than just as others have put it, the quote unquote standard AI. A lot of it does focus around some of the planning and the use and dissemination. So, and making sure that there is human oversight so that there are limits to what can be done automatically. And so that there's some of those checks and balances that are in place. Also included here are additional applicable guidance and data and privacy LLMs. Again, at the bottom here, highlighting that human oversight is needed, and it shouldn't just be set it and forget it. That was a big point of discussion as well in a lot of these meetings. So resources, we have a list of resources here. I think we have a few more that we're going to end up adding as well. And if there are other folks who have things that would you would like to see added, we could do that. We can always add to this. But that actually brings us to the bottom of this document. So thoughts, questions, comments. Is there a specific section someone wants to read again?
You can come off mute and just ask your question, or you can go ahead and put it in chat, or if you want to comment as well, we're looking for that. When will it be available? So we've been working on this resource website for a while now. And it's actually done, but our MSCC website's going to be undergoing a slight refresh. So I think that's slated for the next couple of weeks. So maybe 2, 3 weeks. Sydney, I don't know if you're on here, if you want to update us on a
Yes, so the
timeline.
official refresh should be done by April 13th.
Okay, there you go. Straight from the man doing it.
All right, so see, Brian is asking about the incident response section. Would you be able to elaborate? Sorry, this is okay. Here we go. Would you be able to elaborate on what your question is? Oh, how can AI be included in IR? So basically, I think what we're saying here is that if there is an incident with an AI system, what is your incident response plan? How can you make sure that the data isn't being exfiltrated? How can you make sure that you are in compliance with any of the regulatory things that you have to adhere to? And what are any of the contractual types of considerations? So, how are you going to basically, I think it comes down to like, how are you going to detect that there was a response? And then what are you going, I'm sorry, not a response. How are you going to detect there was an incident? And if there was an incident, what are the things that you're going to do to stop said incident from getting worse? Does that mean you're just going to isolate or quarantine? Are you just going to pull the plug on it? If and if that is the process you're going to do, who's going to do that? What are the steps to isolate or to quarantine? Who are the people that you have to get involved? Um, and then of course the post-event discovery, understanding if it was contained, how it was eradicated, and then how you can bring it back, how can you restore systems. Um, does that kind of address what you're asking? Okay, good. Happy to talk
Jennifer,
about it more, of course.
can I add one thing here?
Of course.
So, you know, Internet 2 has a AI working group that just started working on this. And one of the important things, just to reiterate here, is the task of discovery where AI is, because it is in so many products and you might not even know what product it's in. And that's going to be important in a lot of the regulatory compliance stuff and even your incident response and your data exposure.
Can I just,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, can I just add, Lauren, is it possible to get some of the information that she
Yeah,
was,
I'm starting to add them into the chat, so I'll drop them in a second. And some of them
okay,
are from like Harvard Business Review, and I know that's
uh,
Harvard, and Harvard's particular experience is only so generalizable, but
okay.
um, there are some good insights that are generalizable, like the
If,
types of
if I
stakeholders.
put my email in there, would it be possible for you to send that to me as well?
I'll put it in the chat for sure.
Okay.
Are these use cases?
I don't think there were use cases more as they were just other resources for guidance.
And I think I heard a question about specifically what types of stakeholders to get involved and how to get them involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm linking to articles from EdTech Magazine, from EDUCAUSE. There's the one from Harvard Business Review. But there are some common themes that I think apply across institutional contexts, sizes, geographies,
Thanks for sharing
governance
that,
structures.
Lauren. And then also Shelley shared something as well around activities to facilitate discussion and building policy. And if these are not already in our resources that are listed for the AI policy document, I'll be sure to get them added as well. Okay. All right, so Al, I'm going to turn it back over to you about some upcoming events. The big one being our MSCC annual meeting. Tagline is the rhythm of collaboration, which is coming up.
Let me find. Okay. We invite all of you to register for our meeting and show up. It's going to be in New Orleans. The dates are May 26th through the 29th at the Intercontinental in New Orleans. It should be a good time there. We do have travel support for people from HBCUs and TCUs. There is a budget limit to that, but it's kind of hard to determine, if you don't know how many people are going to register. But I dropped the link to the registration page in there. I think we're going to have a good agenda for the meeting. It should, part of it is just people getting together and being humans together instead of being talking heads here on Zoom all the time. So we really encourage you to register and come join us in New Orleans. I don't have anything else to add there. Jennifer, do you want to jump into the community of practices?
Yes. So just as a reminder for folks, we have two communities of practice. So one of them being the cybersecurity community of practice, which convenes every second Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a space for leaders, faculty, staff, and students interested in continuing conversation around the topics of cybersecurity. Our next one is meeting on Tuesday, April 14th. So definitely come check that out. And if you're interested in participating as a presenter, definitely feel free to reach out to myself and we'll discuss. The other one that we have is the CI Planning Community of Practice, which is every third Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern. And this community of practice is again for IT leaders, staff, faculty, students, and others who are developing or refining their CI planning strategies and CI plan documents. So the next meeting for that one is April 21st. Okay. And lastly, just wanted to put this out here. As always, we are always looking for folks who are interested in presenting at an all-hands meeting. There is a form that you can fill out. So there's a QR code there. Feel free to take a look and submit something if you are interested in doing so. And I think with that brings us to the end of our slides for today. We have a couple of minutes if folks have any other things that they would like to discuss, or if we want to continue a little bit more conversation around some of the AI policy work.
We did have a question in chat about travel and registration information, and there's Sydney dropped in Lanika Stark's email address. That's the person who's managing that support.
Okay, and it looks like you have reached out to her. Okay, we can follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for a great job. Always good.
Thank you all for joining. And hey,
Okay.
like I said, this document was all made possible by input from all of you. So I think you all deserve a pat on the back for yourselves.
So, quick question to you. Yes, to you as well. You're going to be sending that document out to all of us, and we can share that with folks?
Yes, we will. We're going to make it available in the resource website, so it should be available in like early mid-April.
Okay.
In the meantime, though, the recording for today's presentation will be made available as well. That will be made available sooner, so you can always come back to reference that in the meantime, if that's useful for you.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
See you next time. Yep.
Bye-bye.